Welcome to the Consulting Leaders Podcast, where we talk about the business of consulting. Whether you're looking to grow your practice or learn from the stories of leaders in consulting, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Guillaume Jouvencel, ex-PwC and co-founder of GHA Marketing. Join me as I interview the best consultants in their niche. Let's get on with the show. Graham, welcome to Consulting Leaders. Happy to have you.
Guillaume, thank you for the invitation. Looking forward to our chat.
It is my pleasure. Let's jump straight into it. So, what got you into the fantastic, yet sometimes a bit stressful, world of consulting and executive coaching?
I'd had a relatively successful professional career. I was running a large organisation, hundreds of millions turnover, thousands of employees, but I'd become very unhappy. I just wasn't enjoying corporate life at all. And so I gave it up and started to work for myself, which meant I had to find ways of helping organisations. And that's what consulting is. And we became a change provider for organisations, particularly in supply chain. And we're helping people reinvent their supply chains or just improve the efficiency of their existing supply chains, which in turn led to significant change. And that exposure, I suppose, got me involved at highest levels, and I became a mentor, a coach, and I formally studied my coaching qualifications and then set about becoming an executive coach per se. And really that's the history to it.
So, although it's in the name, tell us a bit more about what problem you solve. Like what is that one thing that you help solving for your clients?
As an executive coach, you're working on a relatively intimate basis, on a one-to-one basis usually, to help them address issues they really want to change in their life. Now, they're usually a combination of professional elements and personal elements. And a program we would work with the client would be somewhere between 6 and 12 months, but they're looking for relatively profound change. And that change is usually driven from themselves. So obviously, if it's being sponsored by their organisation, that might be something that has been pointed out to them, that if they want to progress in their career, they need to improve in certain areas. The nature of the problems vary enormously. It can be relationship issues, it can be hard skills like commercial skills, it can be selling skills, it can be dealing with stress and mental fitness. Think of an issue that someone wants to work on, and pretty much it'll arrive in a coaching session at some point.
So it's really helping them develop the skills that they lack to achieve the specific outcome that they want. What is that? Go ahead.
It might be that from a business owner's point of view, a CEO's point of view, he's recognizing that he's not getting the most from his organization, from his people, for various reasons, and he wants to improve that. He wants to change that. If it's a C-suite member, it may be that that's something that's been pointed out to them in some 360 feedback or in a one-to-one review or whatever it is. And those sorts of changes can lead to changes in the organization's performance, which in turn leads to improved performance for the individual and just generally gives people the kind of satisfaction from personal development that they're looking for.
So can you tell us a bit more about those specific leaders that you help? Like, is there any specific niche, industry, company size, specific problematic that you help more with? Like, who's your ICP typically?
Okay. We've coached people from Beijing to Houston in Texas and around the world generally, but the people we really like working with are business owners or business leaders, CEOs, and they're C-suite, but the people who work directly for them, people who can really have an impact on the organization itself. And so that the work we do helps them as individuals and helps the organization. there is no particular size. We've done a lot of work with SMEs. We've done a lot of work with the not-for-profit sector, which is a really interesting sector in its own right, with its own challenges. But we've worked for global organisations. We've worked for very small private enterprises. There isn't really a sector or a size of organisation that we like to work with.
So industry and company size agnostic. That
Completely.
makes sense. It's funny that you mentioned Houston, because this is where I'm planning to move in the next coming month. So I like that you mentioned this one specifically. Haven't looked into Beijing yet, but who knows? And it's going to be an interesting one with you, I think, Graham, because when you can help, it's not everyone, right? But it's all the leaders out there. How do you get the attention of those specifically? To be a bit more precise, how do you market? How do you brand? How do you get the attention of the right people when it's so broad? How do you solve that problem?
Yeah, everybody says being specific is terrific, don't they? They all say the more focused you can be,
That's
the
what
more
they say.
likely your marketing's going to be. And I think that's probably true as a generalization. The most fruitful, the most efficient method for marketing in any consulting, probably in any professional services generally, but specifically in coaching, is referrals. If a satisfied client introduces you to a prospect client, you're very nearly all the way there with being able to help them. And so we really cultivate relationships with clients in the hope that not only will we be able to help more and more of their own organization, but their fellow organizations, their friends, their colleagues, that they believe we would be a good fit for. We've over the years we've used all of the kinds of marketing techniques you can think of. So we've done digital advertising, we've done webinars, we've done speaking events, we've digital advertising in terms of Facebook and Google and so on, and they all work. There's no doubt about it. We create content, we create podcasts, everything works. Some are just more efficient than others. And the one thing I would say, particularly in this arena, be very self-disciplined about it. As an organization, if you have got a marketing plan and there are things you're going to do every day, every week, every month, every quarter, every year, do them. Keep doing them. It's hard work, it costs money, it takes time. But if you don't do them, that's the only certainty of outcome. You certainly won't win business if you don't do them. And so work hard at the marketing and it will yield. But bearing in mind, some of the routes to market are much more efficient than others. And as I say, the most efficient is referrals.
Okay, so this is going to be an interesting one. What I love about interviewing people like you, Graham, who are in business for like decades, is that clearly they figured out something, right? Otherwise, they wouldn't be here anymore in the sense of business. So I love what you say, because that really, I vibe with this. I do believe that anything can work. We happen to do something very specific, but like SEO can work, ads can work, dancing on TikTok can work, going to speaking conferences. It's just like, what do you vibe with the most, and what do you get the most output per unit of time, right? When we say anything can work, then you want to use the thing that will work the best, usually. So you've tested many things. You're in business for 26 years, at least for Sage Consulting.
Yeah,
so
at least. Yeah.
What has worked the best for you? Like, what can other executive consultants, leadership coach can learn from you based on your experience? What has worked for you the best?
Well, it's an interesting thing. There's no doubt referrals are, as I mentioned earlier, referrals, satisfied customers introduce you to other customers that's it. However, over the decades, different routes to market come and go. So at the beginning, telesales was a very successful, fruitful market, and that faded away. And yet in recent years, like the last 1 or 2 years since the epidemic, it's come back. And you can get opportunities through telemarketing, which is an unusual thing. You'd be surprised by that. I think producing content and having things to say to an audience that they value, that they learn from, not only gives a validation to who you are and your capabilities, but I think it intrigues people and they want to learn and they want to know more and they want to engage with you. So I think podcasts, webinars, things of that nature are relatively good. I think digital adverts are in a low phase for us right now. I think they've got to a point where they're not attracting the kind of individual clients that we would really be interested in. It could be that the market's tired of it. I'm not sure. I don't know. But they would be the things that I would work on. I would definitely maximize referrals, ask for referrals, encourage clients to do that, create situations where clients will give you referrals. So go to networking events and so on with your clients. Try and create content that interests people and adds value to the audiences, whether that's a podcast, whether that's a webinar, whether it's content on your website. Make it current, make it interesting, make it value added.
I like that a lot. So obviously content, I think to double down on this one. And here I'm talking about any form of content, right? Well, ideally content that will allow you to appear in an authentic way though. So we're in 2026, the moment we're recording this episode. We are in a day and age where anybody can claim anything on the internet. And I think creating that track record of helpful, insightful, and educational content in your niche, whilst bearing in mind the ICP and the person that you're trying to help. Obviously, we're not after vanity metrics specifically here, but like putting content out there will not only help you get more business, it will oil all the other acquisition channels that you may have. If we take referrals, for instance, for you, Graham, you get a referral, usually those convert at a high percentage, but still people will look you up and they will research and they will say, okay, if they see that you're alive, right, on LinkedIn, on the blog, on the podcast, whatsoever, it has a higher likelihood of converting.
Yeah.
Talk to us a bit more about referrals. So what I liked in what you say is you're active about those referrals. And I think that's a mistake a lot of B2B coach and consultants make, is that they rely on referral and whatever comes. But you mentioned ask for it, go after it, see who you can help. Can you tell us a bit more how you execute on that without being too pushy? Like, hey, send me more business. Do you have friends? Do you have friends? How do you do that?
What's wrong with pushy? We're not pushy. If you are in an organization, say you're working with a chief executive, and you're coming to the end of the program, and he talks to you about a friend that he's got or a colleague that he's got that's got problems, you could say, if you'd like a chat, I'd be really happy to sit down and have a coffee with him. And it isn't a pushy request, it is offering a service. It's offering an intervention free of charge, essentially. Another way, which is the same thing but in a different context, is to invite your client to a social event. Create that social event, whether it's a dinner, or drinks, and bring multiple clients to that event and circulate. And you'll be surprised what comes out of those kinds of environments where people will say, I've just left this meeting, or I've got a friend, or I've got a colleague, and they will, in that very relaxed position, really relaxed situation, join the dots up for you. And so it's creating the environment where your client sees that they want to help you, or indeed help themselves, help a friend. And it isn't really about being pushy, but you could do the, have you got any friends you'd like to introduce us to? But I don't think it's as effective as the kind of things I've just mentioned.
So I love this. And I know we are going down the rabbit hole of referrals, but it's actually rare to have people who deliberately optimize for referrals. So couldn't agree more with you. Like if you have the bandwidth, the cash flow, and the opportunity to create ideally in-person events, where you can invite a mix of clients, potential clients, and people that they bring who are like them. Oh, this is gold. I had a guest on the show who explained to me that she was organizing quarterly dinners. Half of the people were clients of hers. The other half were people that her clients were in charge of bringing, and people like them. So smart. And she was making sure that every dinner didn't have like any competitors between the different guests, so that you optimize for actual interaction and referrals. The thing that I like to do is when it's going well with the clients. So you want to do that at the highest point of satisfaction, right? If you just messed up or the client is not happy, don't ask for a referral. But when you're there, it's like, hey, we love working with people like you. Who else do you know who's as awesome as you that we could potentially help as well? And if they come up with some names, ask for a 3-way introduction. Hey, would you mind, connecting us via a 3-way introduction via email or even text? And like, you're asking it in a kind way, obviously. Love that. You had a podcast as well, Graham. Tell me more about that.
We do have a podcast. We've been doing it for several years now.
So what's the goal here by doing it? Tell us a bit more.
Well, it's the truth of it is, really, it's turned into really quite an interesting exercise all in its own right. Mm-hmm. I interview interesting people who have an aspect on business or coaching or leadership development or something along those lines, and we'll spend half an hour, 40 minutes in a relatively casual conversation, and they'll share with me and obviously therefore with the audience their experiences. And I've had some fascinating conversations. And so on the one dimension, I do it just because I really like doing it. I like meeting these people. It's fun. But from an audience added value point of view, I'm bringing to the audience perspectives, experiences, techniques, opportunities that they probably wouldn't have seen otherwise. And a lot of the guests for my podcast come from around the world, whether it's the Far East or whether it's America or Europe. And so not only is it different from a technique point of view, often it's different culturally. And so I find that really, really interesting thing to do. I guess that shows in the way we prepare the podcast, and I guess it shows in the way the audience responds to it.
Amen. And I think back to what you were saying around content and genuine, authentic content. Podcast. Obviously, I'm a bit biased here, so I'm preaching to the choir. But like, this helps a lot. Cool. I would love to spend all my day talking about marketing, Graham, but I also need to ask you about other things because people want to learn about the whole thing, not just marketing. Tell me a bit more how you move from that, right? So referrals, actively researching referrals, organizing dinners, putting content out there, the podcast, everything that you just mentioned, which is part of your marketing mix, right? Which I suspect is catering to education, problem awareness, solution awareness. How do you then move into a, sales conversation and a scope of work and a letter of engagement? Like, what does the sales motion look like in your business?
If we stick strictly with the coaching, though it's true of consulting as well, but we'll start with it particularly from a coaching point of view. It's about getting the prospective client to really identify what the problems are they're trying to address. And so it's an open conversation, usually with me asking lots of questions to try and get to the bottom of what it is they're trying to deal with. What do they want to change? What do they want to improve? And that can be quite a lengthy process. It might not be something that's over within 5 minutes. It could be a lengthy conversation. It might even take more than one conversation. And if it's really complex, it might take some diagnostic work as well. At the end of that conversation, I then know, as do they, what it is that they want to change. And we can then talk about the options around how that change can be delivered. So is it a coaching program? Is it an educational program? What is it, a cultural change program? What is it that would work best for them? And you can then tailor your proposal based around that. And in my experience, if you've really successfully unraveled the problem and you successfully take them on the journey of how you might help them to fix it, you will relatively quickly get to the point where they're open to a proposal and possibly even just accept it very quickly.
I like that. How do you, and that's maybe, it's funny because it's probably back to the referral aspect, but more like for that similar client, how do you optimize for retention, Graham? Because I mean, after doing business for so long, I suspect that, I mean, from my experience, you grow a business by getting more demand, right? But also being able to retain those customers. That's how you grow, really. So how have you been going about that in your practice for the last 26 years? How do you retain customers and make sure that one engagement transforms into another and another and another?
Well, the simple answer is delivering value, but that
helps.
Just start stating the obvious, really. But when you're a coach and you're taking a client on the coaching journey, it's quite an intimate process, and you can get quite close to each other, as in knowing each other on a personal basis and understanding what's in their lives for them. And so that intimacy bears an opportunity to be able to live beyond the coaching program. So that's one aspect. Staying in touch, perhaps inviting them to social events and so on is one aspect. The other aspect is that you then are perhaps asked, say that you've done some work with the CEO. He then asks you, or she asks you then to do work with members of their C-suite. And then perhaps members of the C-suite ask you to work with their heads ofs and so on. So you are able to continue and maintain the relationship. Now, it might be that then comes to an end and you've got a gap of a year, 6 months, 18 months. And yet they then come back again and say, we've now got another cohort of people we'd like you to help. And it's about staying in touch in between the ending of one particular program and the start of the next program, or continuing with the different aspects of the work you do with different cohorts. It's more natural than it sounds, I think, because if you've been successful in helping them achieve their goals, if you've been successful in helping the organization evolve, you become a trusted person that they turn to. And sometimes that manifests in just a phone call for a, what do you think about this? Or have you got an opinion on that? Which is not a fee earning opportunity. It's just a relationship sustainer. So I think if you deliver the value in the coaching environment, you will have the opportunity, I believe, to continue the relationship without it looking or even really being a sales pitch. Did that answer the question, Guillaume?
It does, and I'm gonna dig a little bit further. Do you have any specific actions, milestones, specific workflow systems that allow you to do that very thing? Is it okay? You coach a leader, and then you're gonna look at the company overall, and you're gonna be like, you have 16 other leaders, I can help you still here. Or do you take the same leader and be like, hey, we helped you on that, you're happy, cool. Now this is the next step for you. Like, let's help you here. Do you do that because, I mean, thanks to reports that you've built throughout the journey and you're like, hey, this is where we started, this is where we are now, amazing results, right? Like, how do you tactically execute on that?
Yeah, it's a good question. Let me give you a little bit of detail around the coaching program. When we start a coaching program, it's goal orientated. This is about change, and there are typically half a dozen or so key things, big things that this person wants to be different in their life. And you start by saying, where are we now and where do you want to be on each of these items? And so at the very beginning of the program, you have set out with them, because it's their change, exactly the start point and where they would aspire to finish by on each of those objectives. So when you get to the end of the program, you can very easily see whether or not you've delivered value. Now, you don't wait to the end of the program to identify that. You would be reviewing that on a regular basis through the program. Now, if this was a C-suite member and I was doing that sponsored by the chief executive, I would be keeping the chief executive informed without breaking any confidentiality of the coaching program as to the progress I believed I was seeing, and soliciting them to tell me whether or not they were seeing that progress as well. And so that particular process reinforces to everybody that the journey has been successful. And one of the reasons why it's really important is because if a program lasts 12 months, people forget where the start point was, and they're only monitoring the current status quo. And they forget that this person was particularly difficult in certain relationships and is now moderately good, and actually towards the end are fantastic in those relationship situations. But they've lost sight of what the problem was a year ago. But by being able to demonstrate the journey that they've been on and that you've assisted them with, you can demonstrate the value that you've added. And what that does, not only does it reaffirm that, but it plants ideas. It plants ideas of how you might help other people. It plants ideas as to what other solutions you could possibly provide. And so it's quite important, I find, to demonstrate clearly to the person paying the bill and to the coachee exactly how they are doing, you are doing, and what they're getting for the effort and for the investment. That's a primary way of demonstrating what you can do, which then leads to further opportunity.
Love that. I have a bit of a curveball question for you, Graham. I think that's going to be an interesting one because you've been doing this for 26 years. And I mean, I'm myself a business owner, so I know I'm like 2.5 years in, and I'm like, geez. So after so many years in business, what's the one thing that is challenging you right now? Like, what's the next nut that you're trying to crack to, take the business to the next level, if that's even the point? Like, what's the challenge that you're dealing with right now?
I have a perennial, ongoing challenge. I like being developed. I like personally learning. I like experiencing new things. I like encountering new businesses, new industries, new challenges. And so for me, it's the constant need, the constant desire to find the next new thing, the next new situation. That way I continue to stretch myself, I continue to develop myself, and hopefully in turn that offers better value long-term to my clients. Now, that does not mean I don't work with historic clients. It does not mean I don't want to work with people I've worked with for many years. I don't mean that at all. What I do seek out are new opportunities for learning, new opportunities for exposure to different situations.
I'm trying to think. So what's the latest thing that you've learned? What's the last situations that pushed you to learn and, discover something new that you hadn't faced before, and that allowed you to, grow?
Well, this is interesting questions.
Thank you.
A friend of mine runs a peer group development program where business owners and business leaders meet on a monthly basis, and in the mornings there is a world-class speaker, and then in the afternoons the group talks about the problems that individual members of the group might have in order to get support from other members of the group. Unfortunately, my friend was taken seriously ill at the beginning of last year, and along with somebody else, we stepped in to effectively chair and manage that group in his absence. Now, I've never run anything like that before, Gil. I've never had to find speakers. I've never had to plan an educational program. I've never had to maintain a number of events in the course of the year to a routine and a regular pace. And I've never had to do it with an audience of CEOs and business owners who are very demanding because they're paying a lot of money for this service. So that's one example of something that happened for me in the last 12 months. I'm now fairly comfortable I could run that on my own if I had to in the future. Like most people, I'm doing my very best to keep up to speed with AI. I've read a number of books. I've been on a number of courses. I subscribe to a series of news sheets and all sorts of things to try and understand what is the art of the possible. I talk to people who use AI on an ongoing basis in their businesses, and I'm doing my best to keep up to speed with it, because then I can feed that in as opportunities for my clients if I can understand it, if I can introduce them to it. So there are two examples, but I could lead with many, really. It's just I'm open to anything, really.
No, that's good. And so the thing that I love about entrepreneurship is that if you're serious about it, of course, it forces you to constantly learn. Like, the market doesn't care. It doesn't take gloves. And you can either, the question that I see my mentor often asking me is, do you want to be right or do you want to be rich? And it's like, if you want to be right, sure, you can, push for your agenda, and the market will reject you and it will never work whatsoever. Or, a dose of humility, humble yourself, learn. You will constantly be faced with new situations, new problems. You start a business, you literally have to do everything, right? You do sales, marketing, admin, delivery, HR, whatever you need to do. And what you just said here is very interesting, is that even after 26 years in the same industry, the same company, you keep on learning on a yearly basis, because this is what the market requires. Graham, I think this was...
I can't echo that enough, Gil. I think if you make yourself vulnerable and open up to change, you improve your opportunities to succeed many, many, many fold. If you are fixed that you believe you know the answer, then I think you reduce your chances of success.
Amen to that. Graham, if people want to find out more about you, see what you do, where should they go?
They can find me on LinkedIn. So it's Graham Whiley at LinkedIn. You can find me at sagegreen.com or theexecutivemindset.co.uk. And thank you, Gil. It's been an honor and a privilege, and I've really enjoyed our chat together.
Likewise, Graham. We'll put all the links in the description. For what I'm concerned, you've gained at least one new connection on LinkedIn out of this interview. Me, I just added you. Graham, thank you so much for coming on Consulting Leaders.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Consulting Leaders Podcast. We hope you learned valuable lessons on how to grow your practice and take your business to the next level. Make sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you're listening to this show so you never miss an episode. To apply and be a guest on the show, click the link in the description. See you next time.